Coordinate system. Coordinate system all revolves around finding the location about a point, a person, a place, something in space. I'm not talking about outer space. I'm talking about blank space. So in order to find an accurate location of something, we want to then apply two number lines that are intersecting and a grid. Now there's a couple things I want to help you describe a coordinate system with. One of the first things you need to know is that we only work in the first quadrant. The first quadrant only deals with positive numbers. The second, third, and fourth quadrant deal with positive and negative numbers. So you're going to see that in middle school in the future. The first number line that we often use is the horizontal one, the x-axis. This is the very first axis that you're going to use to find the location of a point on. And then you would move to what's called the y-axis. The x and y axis give us exact locations of a point in order for us to then share the exact measurements or locations to maybe someone else. When you try to find the location on the x-axis or the y-axis, you move from number to number. And you have to start at what we call the origin. The origin is located at 0, 0. That is the original or beginning spot that you start at. So let's take a look at our first question. We have the beginning of a trapezoid. Now remember, a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with 4 sides. And right now we currently have 3 points located on that trapezoid. I want to make sure that this trapezoid number 1 is correctly plotted. What that means is when I take a look at the distance from the first point to the second point, let's just say we have point A, point B, point C, and our last point on the trapezoid is point D. And we're required to figure out, where do we put point C? Well, I can eyeball it, or I can take a look at something very important, which is the distance between A and B. The distance between A and B goes from a 2 on the x-axis to a 3. And then when you look at the units on the y-axis, you actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 units apart. So I want to do the same thing to the other side so that way it can be equivalent or equal. So this is where we're going to actually end up putting our point, and this is point C. So if we were to give the location or the ordered pair of our coordinate, I need to go X then Y. This is easy to remember because when we think about the alphabet, it's X, Y, Z. Or when thinking about writing on an elevator, you actually have to go into the elevator or walk straight in before you go up or down. So the ordered pair for C would be 7 on the x-axis and 6 on the y-axis. So if you were to answer this, your answer could be 7, 6, or simply completing where that point would be on the grid. Let's take a look at a second type of question. The second type of question you may find is a distance, or finding the distance between two locations. In this case, we have a school that is already plotted on the grid. And I want to actually then take what I know about the school and figure out where my home is. So the directions say the home is 3 units south, which is actually going down horizontally, and then 2 units east of the school. So I'm going to follow the directions in order to figure out where home is. So the first thing I'm going to go and do is go south 3 units. So I've got that. The second thing I do is it says 2 units to the east of school. Now, if you don't know where east is, oftentimes there is a compass on the coordinate that'll help you out. Otherwise, you're really going to need to know your left from your right. So east means going in the right direction over 2 units. So my home would be located here. Now the final thing I'm required to do is make sure I put down the ordered pair or coordinates of where my home is at. So I noticed that my home is located on the 4 on the x-axis and the 3 on the y-axis. So even though the school is at 2, 6, my home is located at 4, 3. Now be careful because sometimes the direction has you work backwards, starting from the home and then going to the school. So oftentimes you have to think about the opposite direction. Be very careful on those directions. Last example when plotting coordinates. This is what we deal with patterns. Now, we actually have to not only apply a rule or a pattern, but then take that pattern and plot the coordinates, kind of like a line graph. So let's just say this particular pattern has a rule. And the x has a rule that starts at 0, and you add 2. And then you have the y coordinates that actually start at 2, and you add 3. What does this look like? Well, let's take a look. Let's go ahead and create the pattern. So starting at 0, I'm adding 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. Plus 2. Plus 2. Plus 2. Plus 2. Plus 2. Now the y coordinates. This time, remember, I'm starting at 2 and adding 3. So 2 plus 3 is 5. Plus 3 is 8. Plus 3 is 11. Plus 3 is 14. Plus 3 is 17. And then 20. Now, how do I go from patterning to creating coordinates or ordered pairs? Well, remember, we're not going down. We're looking at the relationship side to side. So my first ordered pair or coordinates would be 2, 5. 2 on the x-axis, 5 on the y, which would be here. And then my second coordinate, 4, 8. And then the third one would be 6, 11. Now I do have a 6, but unfortunately my grid only goes to 10, so it'd be about there. So when you take a look at this relationship, if you were to keep going, you notice that it then creates a line plot. A line plot that is increasing. They could be actually having you create 2 patternings, and then you'd have to tell the difference about where they made their greatest gain. So if I were looking at this mathematically, maybe in the thought of money over a time period, I could tell right away that their greatest gain maybe was within the first 2 years. So those are the 3 different ways you might often see how coordinate system is used.